The morning started like any other, sunlight filtering through the kitchen blinds, the faint smell of coffee drifting from the pot, the rhythmic ticking of the old wall clock. I padded down the hallway in my slippers, still wearing my faded pajama set, thinking about the grocery list and whether Emma's favorite cereal was running low. That's when I heard it, closet doors sliding open, drawers slamming shut, the muffled rustle of clothes being stuffed into luggage. I froze halfway up the stairs, my hand tightening on the banister. Mark was in our bedroom, bent over a half-open suitcase, shirts and trousers spilling out onto the bed. His movements were frantic, almost mechanical, like he was trying to outrun a fire only he could see. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked in the stillness. He didn't look up. Didn't pause. Just kept folding, stuffing, zipping. It took me a few seconds to realize my hands were trembling. "Mark, talk to me. You're scaring me." "Nothing. Just the sound of the zipper dragging across metal teeth." Finally, he glanced up, and what I saw in his eyes made my stomach drop. No regret. No hesitation. Just a cold, calculated finality. "I'm leaving today," he said, like it was as casual as announcing he was going to the store. I took a step closer, the hardwood cool under my bare feet. "Leaving, where?" "I'll figure it out," he muttered, pushing past me toward the door. Something inside me screamed that I needed to check our accounts. I ran downstairs, my feet slapping against the wood, the air thick with the smell of coffee that now made me nauseous. Emma was at the kitchen table, spooning cereal into her mouth. "Mom? What's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart," I lied, forcing my voice steady. "Dad's just going on a trip." I grabbed my laptop, my fingers slipping over the keys as I logged into our bank account. The numbers on the screen made my breath hitch. Checking, $247.83. Savings, $0. College fund, Emma Patterson, $0. It felt like the floor had vanished beneath me. 12 years of careful saving, gone. The edges of my vision darkened. I could barely hear Emma's voice anymore, just the roaring in my ears. Somewhere upstairs, a suitcase clicked shut. Mark walked past the kitchen without looking at either of us, dragging the suitcase behind him. The front door opened, then closed with a soft, almost polite click, yet it sounded louder than any slam. I stood in the silence, my coffee growing cold on the counter, realizing in one morning I had lost not only my husband, but also my daughter's future. The door had barely clicked shut before Emma's spoon clinked softly against her cereal bowl. She didn't look panicked the way I expected. Instead, she studied me with those dark, steady eyes so much like her father's, yet different in a way I couldn't name. "Mom," she said, setting her spoon down carefully, "don't worry. I handled it." At first, I almost laughed. It was such an absurd thing for a 12-year-old to say, especially when her father had just walked out with our future in his suitcase. "Handled what?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She shrugged in a way that wasn't quite casual, more like deliberate restraint. "Everything," she said simply, as if we were discussing homework or chores. I wanted to press her, demand answers, but my body felt drained, like someone had pulled the plug and let all my energy seep into the floorboards. "Emma, this isn't something you need to worry about. It's between me and Dad." Her lips quirked in the faintest smile, not mocking, but almost pitying. "That's what you think." She stood, rinsed her bowl at the sink, and placed it upside down on the drying rack with a precision that struck me as oddly adult. The quiet between us wasn't awkward. It was loaded, like the air before a thunderstorm. I sat down at the table, staring at the untouched coffee in front of me. The rich aroma that had always meant comfort now felt cloying, heavy in my lungs. "Emma, did you see Dad take the money?" Her eyes flicked to mine. "I know what he did," she said softly, and something in her tone, calm, unwavering, sent a chill along my spine. Before I could speak again, she slung her backpack over her shoulder. I'll miss the bus if I don't go. We'll talk after school. And just like that, she walked out the door, the morning sunlight catching the edge of her hair as she disappeared down the driveway. I stayed at the table long after she'd gone, my fingers tracing circles on the cool surface. I told myself she was just being dramatic, that she didn't really understand what had happened. But deep down, in the pit of my stomach, I knew better. That night, the house felt too big. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the old plumbing echoed like a reminder that Mark was gone. I tried reading in bed, but the words blurred together. Eventually, I turned off the lamp and lay in the dark, listening to the distant hum of the refrigerator downstairs. It must have been close to midnight when I heard it, the faint, rapid click-clack of keyboard keys. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But then it grew steadier, more purposeful, almost like the rhythm of a drummer tapping out a practiced beat. Emma's room. I padded down the hallway, the carpet muffling my steps. Her door was closed, but a thin line of light spilled out from the bottom, bright against the darkness of the hall. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Finally, I knocked softly. Emma? The typing stopped abruptly, replaced by a moment of absolute silence. Then, her voice, calm, almost cheerful, "Come in." I pushed the door open to find her sitting at her desk, her back straight, hair pulled into a neat ponytail. The glow from her laptop screen lit her face in pale blue. She quickly minimized whatever she'd been working on, and in its place, a school document appeared. "Homework?" I asked, stepping into the room. "History report. The Industrial Revolution." She gestured casually to a textbook on the desk, though it looked suspiciously untouched. The desk itself was a picture of order, pencils lined in a perfect row, papers stacked neatly, her planner open to the current week. Too perfect. Like a set arranged for someone else to see. I placed the mug of hot chocolate I'd brought her on the nightstand. "Thought you could use this." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks, Mom. I'll drink it later." I stood there for a moment longer, my gaze flicking to the closed laptop. "Need any help with your report?" "I'm good," she said quickly, her tone polite but dismissive, the way an adult might shut down an unwanted conversation. I kissed the top of her head and stepped out, but the unease followed me back to my own room. Later, as I drifted toward sleep, the clicking resumed, soft, steady, relentless. It wasn't the sound of a child doing homework. It was the sound of someone working on something they didn't want anyone else to see. And for the first time, I wondered if Emma's cryptic words that morning hadn't been bravado at all, but a warning. 3 days passed with the same quiet rhythm. Emma kept her usual schedule, up at 7:15, fully dressed, backpack packed, lunch ready. She smiled when she left for school, said goodnight when she went to bed, and never once brought up Mark. It was almost too normal. But at night, the sound of typing always returned. On Friday evening, I was putting away a stack of clean laundry in her room when something caught my eye. A single sheet of paper peeked out from under her science textbook on the desk. It wasn't the bright-lined paper she used for school, but crisp white printer stock. I shouldn't have looked. I told myself that. But my fingers moved before my conscience could stop them. I slid the paper free, and froze. At the top of the page were 2 names, Mark Patterson and Rebecca Sterling. Below them was a chain of emails, dates stamped from 3 weeks ago, before Mark had left. The subject lines made my stomach knot, hotel reservations confirmed. Funds transfer complete. Handling Sarah. Each line was a knife, each word another cut. They weren't just planning to be together, they were planning what to do about me. I sat down hard on Emma's bed, the paper trembling in my hands. "Mom." Her voice came from the doorway. I looked up to see her standing there, holding her empty dinner plate. She didn't look shocked or panicked that I'd found the paper. She just assessed me, like she was waiting to see what I'd do. "Where did this come from?" My voice was hoarse. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Dad's not very good with passwords. I blinked. How did you? I stopped mid-sentence. How long have you known about Rebecca? 6 weeks. About the money? The day before he left. My mouth went dry. 6 weeks. 6 weeks my 12-year-old had carried this knowledge, while I'd been blissfully ignorant. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to be sure. And I wanted to figure out what to do about it. She crossed the room, calm as ever, and pulled a spiral notebook from under her mattress. You should probably see this too. The notebook was filled with meticulous handwriting, dates, passwords, diagrams of connections between names, phone numbers, and bank accounts. Some pages had printed screenshots taped in place. Others listed transaction amounts in neat columns. I stared at it all. Emma, this is incredible. And terrifying. She sat beside me on the bed, her small frame rigid with purpose. Dad thinks he's smart, but he's careless. He uses the same password for everything. He never clears his history. He doesn't even log out. I turned the pages slowly, my pulse pounding. She documented more in 6 weeks than I could have gathered in 6 months. What are you planning to do with this? I asked, my voice barely steady. Her gaze didn't waver. I'm still working on that part. But don't worry, Mom. I've got this handled. The same words from that morning echoed in my head. Only now, I understood they weren't bravado. They were a promise. I sat on the edge of Emma's bed, the weight of her spiral notebook in my hands feeling far heavier than paper and ink should. Each page was a map of betrayal, dates and transactions in neat, deliberate handwriting, screenshots taped with precision, arrows connecting names and accounts like threads in a spider's web. Emma sat beside me, posture straight, watching my reaction with an unnerving calm. She didn't fidget, didn't look away. Where did you learn to do all this? I finally asked. Her lips curled in a faint, almost embarrassed smile. YouTube. Forums. Some of it's just common sense if you pay attention. People give away more than they realize. She leaned forward and pulled open her desk drawer, revealing a small external hard drive the size of a deck of cards. She set it in my palm like it was an offering. Everything's backed up here. Twice. Once encrypted, once hidden in plain sight. In plain sight? Emma nodded toward her bookshelf. Inside the case of my old math workbook from 4th grade. No one ever touches it. I stared at her. My 12-year-old had better operational security than most adults I knew. She turned her laptop toward me, waking the screen with a flick of her fingers. A folder labeled Science Fair Project opened, not a science project at all, but an intricate filing system of digital evidence. Subfolders bore names like financial records, communication logs, and identity theft evidence. Inside, there were bank statements showing money transfers from client accounts into personal ones, fake invoices billed to companies that didn't exist, property records linking Rebecca to a condo in Miami she'd never mentioned. Emma clicked through them like she was showing me vacation photos. Dad didn't just take my college fund. He used my social security number to co-sign a mortgage application in Florida. That's about $200,000 in debt they planned to leave in our names. I felt the blood drain from my face. Emma, that's identity theft, she finished for me. It's a federal crime. Her voice was steady, clinical, but I could see the flicker of something sharper beneath, anger held on a tight leash. She clicked to another folder, countermeasures. Inside were scanned copies of fraud reports filed with all 3 credit bureaus, complaints sent to Rebecca's professional licensing board, and anonymous tips to her employer. Rebecca's suspended from work. Her clients are starting to pull out, Emma said, almost casually. The methodical efficiency in her tone made my stomach twist. She had dismantled their lives piece by piece, and she wasn't even finished. Emma, what you're doing, this isn't just risky. It could be dangerous. If they find out. She cut me off. More dangerous than letting them ruin us? I had no answer. She closed the laptop and looked at me directly, her expression a mirror of certainty. They think we're powerless. They're wrong. And I'm not going to wait for someone else to save us. For a moment, I saw not my 12-year-old daughter, but someone older, sharper, a version of her shaped by necessity rather than choice. It terrified me and, in some shameful corner of my heart, made me proud. Emma placed the notebook back under her mattress with deliberate care. Don't worry, Mom. I've planned everything. The words should have reassured me. Instead, they left me wondering just how far she was willing to go. The first time I realized Emma's plan was already in motion, it was a Tuesday afternoon. She came home from school, dropped her backpack in its usual place, and walked straight to her room without a word. 10 minutes later, I passed by her open door and saw her headset on, her eyes fixed on the laptop screen. She wasn't chatting with friends. The window was filled with what looked like a bank's online portal, except it wasn't our bank. Emma. She raised one finger without looking away. Give me 2 minutes. I stood there, torn between scolding her and letting her finish whatever she was doing. Finally, she closed the window, took off her headset, and faced me. That was the last of it, she said. The last of what? Her expression was pure focus. I've shut down every fraudulent account Dad and Rebecca opened using our names. Credit lines, fake investment accounts, even the mortgage application for the Florida house. I sank into her desk chair, my heart pounding. How? She pulled up a series of screenshots. First, I collected evidence, screenshots, transaction logs, proof of forged documents. Then I filed fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus and froze our credit. Once the freeze was in place, I submitted formal disputes for each fraudulent account. Without active credit, nothing can move forward, and it all gets flagged for investigation. She clicked another tab, emails. I also sent anonymous tips to Rebecca's employer and to the state licensing board that oversees her field. Every message included documentation of her embezzlement. I didn't give them everything, just enough to make them take her off active duty while they investigate. The methodical way she explained it made me shiver. What happens next? I asked. She'll be suspended, her clients will panic, and they'll start withdrawing their investments. That means the company will dig deeper into her records. And when they do, Emma gave a small shrug. They'll find everything. It was one thing to hear her talk about closing fake accounts. It was another to realize she had engineered a slow, deliberate collapse. And Dad? I've blocked his access to our remaining accounts. Anything with his name on it is either frozen or under investigation. I've also set up alerts so if he tries to open anything new using our identities, we'll know immediately. Her voice was calm, almost detached, but her eyes burned with a quiet intensity. The next morning, I heard her typing before school. Later that day, the first signs of her plan's impact appeared. Rebecca's LinkedIn profile was updated to on leave, and a comment thread hinted at internal compliance issues. That evening, Emma showed me a screenshot of an email from a client to Rebecca's boss, demanding their portfolio be reassigned. This is just the start, Emma said. I wanted to feel relief. Instead, I felt a strange combination of awe and unease. She was fighting for us, yes, but she was also dismantling 2 adults' lives without hesitation. That night, over dinner, she outlined the next phase. I'm sending a package of evidence to Rebecca's father. He's a surgeon, very concerned about reputation. If he sees what she's been doing, he'll cut her off financially. Without his support, she and Dad won't have the resources to rebuild. I set my fork down. Emma, are you sure? I'm sure, she said, her tone final. This isn't just about getting our money back. It's about making sure they can't do this to anyone else. For the first time since Mark left, I realized my daughter was not just reacting, she was in control. And she had no intention of letting go until she'd seen this through to the end. It was a Tuesday, and the late afternoon sun spilled across the kitchen counter in long golden lines. I was up to my elbows in soapy water, rinsing the lunch dishes, when my phone buzzed on the counter. Mark's name flashed across the screen. My heart lurched. I hesitated for a moment before swiping to answer. Hello? Sarah. His voice was tight, strained, almost desperate. We need to talk. Something very strange is happening. From the living room, I heard the soft click of a laptop closing. A moment later, Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her school uniform, eyes alert. What kind of strange? I asked, drying my hands on a dish towel, my pulse quickening. My bank called this morning. Every account I have has been frozen for suspicious activity. They're saying there's some kind of federal review. And Rebecca, his breath hitched. She lost her job yesterday. Security escorted her out. Someone's going after us, Sarah. Someone with serious technical skills. Emma crossed to the kitchen table, opened her laptop, and began typing with the smooth efficiency of a concert pianist. I glanced at her screen and saw multiple windows flashing open and closed, email accounts, banking portals, data streams scrolling in real time. Who would do something like that? I asked, my stomach tightening even as I already knew the answer. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Rebecca thinks maybe it's a coworker she had a fight with, or, he trailed off suddenly. Wait, what was that? What was what? I said. A beep. Like someone just accessed my email while we're talking. His voice rose, sharp with alarm. Sarah, I can see my inbox opening and closing. Someone's reading my messages right now. Emma's fingers never faltered. On her screen, I caught a glimpse of what looked like Mark's email interface, messages flickering open as she scrolled. Mark, maybe you should hang up and call your bank, I suggested, though my voice was unsteady. No, wait. I need to ask you something directly. His tone shifted, suspicion creeping in. Did you hire someone? A private investigator? A hacker? Emma looked up and gave me the smallest shake of her head before returning to her keyboard. I didn't hire anyone, I said truthfully. Then who? He cut off, the sound of frantic typing coming through the line. Someone just sent an email from my account to my boss. Oh God. It has attachments. Financial documents. Personal messages between me and Rebecca. They're posting this stuff on my social media now. This could ruin me. Mark, if the information is true, it's not harassment, it's exposure, I said quietly. He ignored me. I need you to call them off, Sarah. This is illegal. They'll get caught, and when they do. Emma closed her laptop with a quiet snap, stood, and walked over. Without asking, she took the phone from my hand. Hi, Dad. Emma. Thank God. Sweetheart, listen to me, someone is doing terrible things to me and Rebecca. They're making us look like criminals. You did steal from me, Emma said, her tone conversational, almost polite. You took $75,000 from my college account and used it as collateral for a mortgage in Florida. You also forged loan applications in my name. Silence stretched on the other end. Who told you that? Mark finally asked, his voice tight. No one. I found out myself. I have copies of everything, emails, contracts, bank transfers. I've been watching you for weeks. Mark's breathing grew ragged. You've been watching me? Yes. And Rebecca too. I know about her embezzlement. I know she's been stealing from her clients for years. I know she stopped returning your calls after her father cut her off last week. I heard a sound from him then, a mix of disbelief and fear. Emma, you don't understand. Adults make complicated financial decisions. It's not as simple as it looks. You chose her over us, Dad. You chose money over your family. Actions have consequences. You taught me that. Emma, please, he said, his voice cracking. I have nothing left. I'm living in my car. I can't get a job. That's not my problem, she said, calm as ever. You made your choices. Now you live with them. And without another word, she ended the call, placing the phone gently back on the counter. He won't call again, she told me matter-of-factly. I swallowed hard. How do you know? Because now he knows I'm watching. And he knows that every move he makes, I'll see coming. In the days after that phone call, the fallout began to unfold like a slow-motion train wreck. Rebecca's face vanished from her company's website overnight. Her nameplate was removed from her office door, her parking spot reassigned. On social media, vague posts from coworkers hinted at compliance scandals and client exodus. By the end of the week, Emma showed me a screenshot from a financial news blog. Rebecca Sterling was officially under state investigation for embezzlement. For Mark, the collapse was less public but far more brutal. He called twice more, once from an unfamiliar number, once from a blocked ID. I didn't answer either time. Each voicemail was shorter, more desperate than the last. One afternoon, a mutual friend texted me a photo taken outside a strip mall in another town. Mark was sitting in the driver's seat of an old, beat-up sedan, his hair unkempt, a takeout cup balanced on the dashboard. The caption read, "He's been living in his car for weeks." I should have felt pity. I didn't. Instead, I thought of the empty college fund account, the forged documents, the way he'd walked out of our house without looking back. Actions have consequences, that's what Emma had said. And now, I was watching those consequences catch up with him. At home, Emma barely mentioned his name. She moved through her days with the same disciplined routine: school, homework, dinner, late-night typing sessions. If she felt anything about his downfall, she didn't show it. One night, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I asked her, "Do you ever think about what it must be like for him right now?" She looked up from her plate. "Not really. He wasn't thinking about us when he drained my college fund." The simplicity of her answer was like a door closing. She wasn't angry anymore. Anger meant you still cared. This was something colder, final. By the end of the month, Mark had no job, no apartment, no savings. Rebecca's accounts were frozen, her family refusing to take her calls. Emma had effectively dismantled their lives without ever leaving her room. And yet, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that my daughter had crossed an invisible threshold, one you can't step back over once you've gone too far. Dr. Patricia Reeves's office smelled faintly of lavender and had walls painted in muted shades of blue and green. A shelf held neat rows of children's books, puzzles, and sensory toys, though it was clear Emma had no interest in them. She walked in with the quiet confidence of someone attending a meeting, not therapy. "Emma, I'm Dr. Reeves," the woman said warmly. "Your mom thought it might help to talk about some of the changes happening in your family." "That's fine," Emma replied, settling into the chair across from her. "I know this is probably mandatory after what I did to my father." Dr. Reeves blinked, clearly taken aback by the bluntness. "Can you tell me about that?" And just like that, Emma laid it all out: Mark's affair, the stolen college fund, the identity theft, and the months she'd spent gathering evidence. She described dismantling his and Rebecca's lives with the precision of an engineer explaining blueprints. "How did that make you feel?" Dr. Reeves asked. "Satisfied," Emma said without hesitation. "He stole from me, so I made sure there were consequences. It felt like justice." "Do you ever feel sad about him leaving?" "I feel sad that he chose to become the kind of person who steals from his own child. But I don't feel sad about him facing the results of that choice." There was no tremor in her voice, no hesitation, just a steady, measured tone that didn't belong to a 12-year-old. When the session ended, Dr. Reeves asked to speak with me privately while Emma waited in the lobby. "Mrs. Patterson," she began carefully, "your daughter is remarkable. Her cognitive abilities are exceptional, and her emotional resilience is extraordinary. She has processed a significant betrayal in a way that many adults couldn't manage. Is that healthy?" I asked. "Should a child be able to do what she did without guilt?" "Trauma responses vary widely," Dr. Reeves explained. "Highly intelligent children often intellectualize their emotions instead of feeling them in the traditional sense. Emma has adapted, more than adapted, really. She's taken control of a situation that left you feeling powerless." Her words should have comforted me, but I couldn't shake the unease curling in my gut. "So she's okay?" "She's more than okay. The real question," Dr. Reeves said gently, "is whether you're comfortable with who she's becoming." That evening, back at home, I found Emma in her room again. But instead of her usual folders of evidence, she had a Word document open. The title read, "Digital Safety for Families, Warning Signs and Protection Strategies." "What's this?" I asked, stepping closer. "A guide. For other kids and parents. I'm turning what happened to us into something useful." And just like that, I realized Emma wasn't just surviving. She was evolving, turning our family's disaster into a blueprint for protecting others. The document on Emma's screen was not a simple school project, it was a blueprint for self-defense in the digital age. "Look," she said, scrolling through sections with concise, professional headers, password security, spotting forged documents, recognizing financial red flags, steps to freeze your credit. Each page was clear, precise, and frighteningly thorough. "This section," she pointed, "teaches people how to detect if someone is opening accounts in their name. Most don't realize you can check your credit report for free every week now." Her tone was calm but carried the confidence of someone who had lived every lesson she was teaching. "You wrote all this?" I asked. "Of course," she replied without looking up. "And I tested everything myself. It's useless to give advice you haven't verified." There was no trace of childish uncertainty in her voice. She was operating in the same space as professionals twice her age, and doing it better. She clicked to another section, "Common Tactics Used by Family Members Who Commit Fraud." I read the first bullet point aloud. "Pressuring you to temporarily share access to accounts." My chest tightened. That's exactly what your father did when he asked me to transfer savings to his personal account. Emma didn't react, just typed a note in the margin. "I'll add a case study to illustrate that." "How are you going to share this?" I asked, still trying to grasp the scale of what she was building. "Mrs. Henderson at school is on the PTA. I offered to present it next month. Parents need to know how easily this can happen, even in good families." I imagined her standing in front of a room of adults, speaking with this same quiet authority, and felt both pride and a flicker of apprehension. "This isn't just for us anymore," she continued. "What happened to me happens to other kids all the time. The difference is, they don't know how to fight back. I can show them." Her words landed heavy. Emma wasn't driven by revenge now, she was driven by mission. I watched as she formatted the final page, "Resources for legal and financial help. Hotlines, non-profit organizations, government websites, all meticulously listed." "You're turning our disaster into a survival guide," I murmured. Emma finally looked at me, a small but genuine smile softening her face. "Exactly." And in that moment, I understood, she wasn't just documenting what she'd done. She was laying the groundwork to protect countless others from the kind of betrayal we'd endured. It started with an email that looked almost too polished to be real, sleek branding, a formal letterhead, and a subject line that read, "Opportunity for Exceptional Talent." Emma opened it at the kitchen table while I was making dinner. "Secure family," she read aloud, her voice neutral. They're offering me a spot in their youth development program. Full scholarship to any college I choose, plus a guaranteed job after graduation. Starting salary, she paused, her eyebrows lifting slightly. $120,000 a year. I nearly dropped the spatula. Emma, that's incredible, she finished for me, though her tone carried none of the excitement I expected. I came around the table to read over her shoulder. The offer was real, signed by the company's CEO, complete with contact information and a phone number for confidential discussions. This could set you up for life, I said, my heart racing. Why do I feel like you're not impressed? Emma closed the laptop with deliberate care. Because they don't just want me, they want to own me. I blinked. What do you mean? They're not offering this because they're impressed by my grades. They've been following what I've done. They want me to build security software for them, tools they can sell to corporations that will make money off people's fear. They'll control everything I create, and I'll never actually see the people I'm protecting. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. You could still do good work, I tried. Help people on a bigger scale. Emma shook her head. Not if the company's priority is profit. I'm not handing over my ideas so they can put them behind a paywall. There was no arrogance in her refusal, only certainty. She'd already weighed the pros and cons, run the mental calculations, and decided. So what are you going to do instead? I asked. She reached into her backpack and slid a small, professionally printed business card across the table. The matte finish caught the kitchen light. It read, E. Patterson, Family Financial Protection Consultant. I already have clients, she said simply. 6 so far, all from referrals. I charge $75 an hour. I stared at the card. You're 13 years old. Age doesn't matter when you're online. My clients think I'm an adult cybersecurity expert. I help them identify red flags, secure their accounts, and report crimes. Last week, I helped a family in Ohio recover $30,000 stolen from their grandmother's retirement fund. Her eyes met mine, unwavering. I'm not interested in working for someone else. I want to choose who I help, and I want the work to actually matter. As I looked at her, I realized Emma had made her decision long before that email arrived. The offer was never going to change her path. She wasn't chasing a career. She was building a mission. Emma's office was nothing more than her bedroom desk, a tidy surface with a laptop, an external monitor, and a headset. But in the digital space, it was a fully operational command center. Every evening after homework, she'd log into her secure workspace, where encrypted video calls and private chat channels connected her to clients across the country. She never used her real name, only E. Patterson, the professional consultant with a reputation for solving complex problems quickly. I take on no more than 6 clients at a time, she explained one night as I brought her tea. That way, I can give each case the attention it needs. One of those cases was a family in Ohio. Their teenage son had drained $30,000 from his grandmother's retirement account to invest in a cryptocurrency scam. Emma traced the transactions through multiple wallets, gathering the evidence needed for the bank to reverse most of the transfers. She's getting her money back, Emma said, sipping her tea like she'd just finished a math assignment. Another case involved a single mother in Arizona who discovered her ex-husband had been using their child's social security number to open utility accounts and rack up debt. Emma walked her through the process of freezing the credit file, disputing fraudulent charges, and filing an identity theft affidavit with the FTC. It's not glamorous, Emma told me. It's forms, phone calls, and waiting on hold. But when you're in that situation, just knowing the right steps can save months of stress. She kept detailed case files, color-coded folders on her laptop, each client assigned a code name. She used a dedicated encrypted phone number, and all payments went through an online processor tied to a business account she'd set up in my name. How do you get clients? I asked one evening. Word of mouth, she said simply. I helped Mrs. Henderson secure her parents' bank accounts after a phishing scam. She told 3 friends, and they told 3 more. People don't talk about this stuff publicly, they're embarrassed. But they're desperate for help. I watched her work late into the night sometimes, her face lit by the glow of her monitor, her fingers moving quickly but precisely. It was unsettling and awe-inspiring all at once. She wasn't just solving problems, she was restoring control to people who'd been blindsided the way we had been. One Saturday morning, I overheard her on a call with a client. The most important thing, she said gently, is to remember this isn't your fault. Adults are supposed to protect you, not take from you. When they don't, you have to protect yourself. Her words made me pause in the hallway. They were the same words she'd said to me in different forms over the past months, but now she was giving them to someone else, passing the shield forward. By the end of her first month in business, Emma had earned more than I made in 3 months at the library. But she didn't brag. She set aside most of the money, slowly rebuilding the college fund her father had stolen. It's not about getting rich, she told me. It's about making sure no one can ever take away my future again. Looking at her across the table, with her hair pulled back and her posture straight, I realized she was no longer just my daughter. She was becoming something more. A protector, not just for herself, but for anyone who needed one. It started as a whisper online, cryptic comments on financial forums, vague posts on LinkedIn hinting at massive internal fraud inside a respected investment firm. Within a week, the whispers became headlines. Rebecca Sterling under state and federal investigation for embezzlement. The news broke on a Friday morning. By noon, every major financial news outlet had picked up the story. Photographs of Rebecca, smiling at corporate events, shaking hands with clients, were suddenly side by side with screenshots of court filings and regulatory complaints. Emma watched it unfold from her laptop at the kitchen table, her breakfast cereal untouched. They're pulling all her cases, she said matter-of-factly. Clients are moving their money faster than the firm can process withdrawals. It wasn't just Rebecca's career that was crumbling. The investigation revealed other victims. Families who had trusted her with retirement savings, college funds, even medical settlement money. The numbers were staggering. Look at this, Emma said, swiveling the screen toward me. A financial watchdog blog was calling it one of the most significant white-collar cases in the state that year. Several commenters were speculating about the anonymous whistleblower who had turned over the original evidence. I felt my throat tighten. Do you think they'll figure out it was you? Emma shook her head, her tone calm but certain. No. I used 7 proxy servers and paid for the drop accounts with cryptocurrency. They'll never connect it to me. And even if they tried, all they'd find is clean data. Her confidence should have reassured me, but it only deepened the strange mixture of pride and unease I'd been carrying since this all began. By the end of the month, Rebecca's name was synonymous with betrayal. Panel discussions on cable news debated the ethics of whistleblowing, while op-eds praised the anonymous source for protecting vulnerable investors from continued harm. But the part Emma seemed most focused on wasn't the media storm, it was the ripple effect. 12 other families have come forward, she told me one evening, scrolling through updates. Some didn't even know they'd been defrauded until they saw her name on the news. I realized then that for Emma, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about exposure, about using one case to illuminate a much larger pattern. And as I looked at her, calm, composed, with that quiet fire in her eyes, I understood that Rebecca Sterling's downfall was just one chapter in a mission my daughter had only begun to write. By spring, the frenzy around Rebecca's case was starting to fade from the headlines, but in our home, something else was taking shape. Emma was spending less time on takedowns and more time building. She still handled her clients, but now her evenings were filled with drafting outlines, compiling resources, and researching nonprofit law. I want to start an organization when I'm 18, she told me one night over dinner. free protection services for families who can't afford private consultants. People need help before the damage happens, not after. She said it so simply, like announcing she planned to bake cookies. But I could see the way her mind was already working. Structuring operations, setting goals, anticipating challenges. What made you decide that? I asked. Emma set down her fork. Because what happened to us isn't rare. Most people just don't talk about it. I've seen it with my clients, embarrassment keeps them quiet, and silence protects the thief. If I can give them the tools before it starts, maybe they never have to go through what we did. Her conviction was unshakable. The next week, I found her in her room on a video call with a boy about her age. She was speaking softly, her voice warm but steady. I know it's scary, she told him. But you're going to be okay. We'll lock down what's left of your college fund and make sure it can't happen again. And none of this is your fault. I leaned against the doorframe, unseen. It was the same reassurance she had given me in her own way months ago. Now she was giving it to someone else, passing along the shield she had forged in the fire of our own disaster. When the call ended, she glanced up and caught me watching. He's in Minnesota, she explained. His mom's been using his account for years. He just found out. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Emma had moved beyond our story. She wasn't just the girl who'd taken down her father and his mistress anymore. She was becoming something else, a force in her own right, a protector for strangers who didn't even know her name. And I realized, with a swell of pride and something that felt almost like awe, that my daughter had transformed her pain into a mission that might outlive us both. The morning air was crisp as Emma stood at the end of the driveway, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She looked like any other 8th grader waiting for the school bus, except I knew better. Ready for school? I asked, leaning on the doorframe. Always, she said, flashing a quick smile. Then, almost as an afterthought, love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. I watched her walk toward the bus stop, the early sunlight catching in her hair. From a distance, she could have been any kid. But beneath that ordinary exterior was someone extraordinary, someone who had taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and turned it into a shield for others. Mark was gone, left to whatever remained of his new life. His absence no longer hurt the way it once did. The emptiness had been filled. Not by revenge, but by purpose. Inside, the kitchen table was scattered with the remnants of Emma's latest project, pamphlets, resource lists, and a draft for a family digital safety workshop she planned to present at the community center next month. Her handwriting was neat, deliberate, almost professional. I thought back to the day she told me, "Don't worry, I've handled it." At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. Now I did. She hadn't just handled the crisis, she'd reshaped the future. And maybe that's what surviving betrayal really is, not just getting through it, but using it to build something stronger than what was taken from you. As I poured my coffee, I realized Emma had done more than protect us. She had created hope, something she was now sharing with people we might never meet. The bus arrived, and she climbed aboard without looking back. I stayed at the window until it disappeared down the street, a quiet certainty settling over me. Whatever challenges came next, we'd face them on our terms. Emma had won her future. And in doing so, she had given me back mine. In the quiet aftermath of all that had happened, one truth stood unshakable: loyalty, courage, and truth are the pillars that hold us steady when the ground gives way beneath us. Emma's story was never just about exposing betrayal, it was about refusing to let deceit define the future. Loyalty meant standing by the people who truly stood by you, even when blood ties broke under the weight of lies. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to face the darkness, to confront injustice even when the opponent was someone you once loved. And truth, harsh, unyielding, and liberating, was the light that cut through manipulation, denial, and shame. Emma embodied these values not in grand gestures, but in calculated, unflinching action. She proved that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it speaks in quiet conviction, in the discipline to gather facts, in the resolve to protect what matters. Watching her transform pain into purpose was a reminder that justice begins in the smallest decisions, to see clearly, to act with integrity, to protect without compromise. Betrayal will always leave scars, but those scars can become the outlines of a map. One that leads not back to what was lost, but forward to something unbreakable. In the end, the greatest victory was not in destroying those who had wronged her, but in building a future they could never touch. Life will test us with people who mistake our kindness for weakness, but the true lesson is this: never trade your principles for comfort, never let fear silence the truth, and never underestimate the quiet power of someone who refuses to surrender what is right.